this morning, so do your stuff, Bill.
How did I get to be host? Oh, man.
You were the organizer.
Well, yeah, I'm part of the organization. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be an easy one for us because we have Minnie Gallman here, and she's going to kind of go through a presentation on nighttime / astrophotography and a workshop that she went to. And she has a PowerPoint presentation, and as we go along, if you have questions, ask as we go along, because she has it in a PowerPoint presentation, and if we have to go back and forth at the end, it'd be pretty cumbersome. So just let it rip as we go along. And what I'll need from you, Graham, is to give access to Minnie to share.
Already done.
Already done. Okay. Thank you, Graham. Time for me to say something?
Yeah, it's all yours.
Oh, okay. Well,
And Minnie, not yet. Thank you for being here.
oh, you're welcome, but you haven't even seen what I have to say.
Well, thanks in advance.
Okay, I'll take it. Thank you, Michael. A little bit about me. I'm obviously a photographer. Oh, I've been holding cameras ever since I had that brownie box. I have a picture of myself taking a picture of my sister. I have my sister's picture at 4 years old. So I was at 4 years old, I had a camera in my hand. But I didn't really become serious about it until I joined a camera club in Northern Virginia, where I live, just outside of DC. We've been here just about 6 years. And that camera club exposed me to over 200 photographers. It was huge, but a lot of very, every level, professional through, iPhone. But it really got me interested in photography, and I got interested then, of course, in the competitions, and then that makes you push yourself a little bit. The cameras, so I enjoy photography. What you're going to see today is something that was like a first time try, though it dawned on me, well, hi, Michael, another Michael, that I actually had done some night photography before. I dipped into it. And the picture behind me is one I took from Iwo Jima. I can't remember how many years ago. And it is actually a double exposure, not a moon planted out there. About twice a year, the moon is in this position over all these monuments, which is a really cool photo. But the moon, as you probably know, is really bright. So I needed to have a whole different setting for the moon as opposed to the time exposure that I took for the rest of them. So I actually used two exposures, took the moon, remembered where it was, then took the rest of it. So I guess I have dabbled in it. And it's fun to try stuff you haven't tried before. And that's what this workshop was. I guess I'll tell you what my camera, generally, I'm now using a Nikon D750, which is the full frame. And, but I have in spares, I have a good old mirrorless camera, the Panasonic 6X9, which does a very good job and is a lot lighter than carrying around the good old Nikon. I also have a little point and shoot, which goes from something like 28 to 300. It's also a Panasonic. It's the ZS200. And it takes excellent photos. And of course, the iPhone. Don't ever forget that. It's the camera you have. I mean, I was in Scotland, and we were taking a break. We were on the Isle of Skye, and I had my cell phone with me, and I looked up And there was this gorgeous rainbow line across the fields of heather. Really wished I had my good camera, but I took it, entered it in the Washington Post magazine travel section, and it actually got an honorable mention. So, hey, you know, it's do what you have. And it's the photo that makes the difference. And iPhones are getting much, much, much better. The workshop I took, which I'll get into in just a second, was a workshop with a man by name of Mark Buckner, Buckner. He lives in the Outer Banks, and he does workshops there on different things. This one was the Milky Way. He only takes 5 people at a time, so it was a really small group. And I guess you call it a workshop in that really the way it worked was we didn't start until 6 o'clock at night, and then went to whatever time in the morning. I guess it was about 3 in the morning the first night. We had 2 nights. And so it was an exciting time, and you really depend on the weather. So it worked. And what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about what it's all about. And then I'm going to show you some photos from that experience. And again, as Bill said, speak up if you have questions. I'll try to answer them. I'm not an expert in night photography, but it's amazing what you can do when you listen to the person you're with and they help you a little bit, and then you start going from there. So I am ready to get into share screen, and go. Come on, guy. There we go. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Good. Does it take up your whole screen?
No.
No. Okay. Because I got notes on the side and I don't really need that. But anyhow, so here we go. Yep, it's all there. I decided if it was night photography, I should make this with a black background, don't you think?
Good choice.
Good choice. Anyhow, this is what I'm going to talk about. And again, stop me if it needs a little help, and try to talk to you about it. One of the things, this isn't a, oh, I think I'll just go out and take the Milky Way tonight type thing. This is something you really do need to plan for, and I'll talk about planning. Equipment, and I'll get into what I used and kind of some of the general equipment and what you're looking for if you're doing night photography, particularly of the sky, where you need as wide an angle as you can. Then I can talk a little bit about camera settings, because they're a little different for night photography. And then post-processing, which really makes the pictures stand out. Post-processing, I'm going to show what to do in Lightroom. I hope most of you are familiar with Lightroom. I guess some are elements, and there's a lot of similarities. So hopefully all that works. Okay, first on planning. Need to find a place away from light pollution. The workshop was in the Outer Banks. Truthfully, I didn't know the Outer Banks was going to be that dark, but it was gorgeous. So that's something that you really need to do. I mean, I've seen beautiful photos taken out west. I mean, the Milky Way is obviously everywhere, but you need to find a place that you have good, away from light, because that is going to detract, definitely, as you know. And then you have to know the best times of year to see it. And what I have here is a chart, which I don't expect you to read. But what it is the Milky Way calendar, and where it's pink is where it's really good, a good time to see it. And unfortunately, the last time this year was August 7th. So, but the blue times are, pretty good times, but not as good times. And the black times are, forget it. So you can see it's mainly concentrated from about April here to about August. And so that's the time you need to think about. And meaning that the Milky Way is visible to us. At times it is not. And also you need something called the galactic center. And I have to read this because I'm not real good at memorizing definitions. The galactic center of the Milky Way is the rotational center of it. The center of the galaxy is located, this is our galaxy, Milky Way galaxy, is located between the tail of Scorpius and the teapot of Sagittarius for those star watchers. And since our solar system lies in one of the spiral arms, we live in the flat plane of the Milky Way. We can actually see the dense plane of the Milky Way stretch across the sky in dark places that do not have a lot of surrounding light pollution. And that galactic center is only visible to us certain times of year. And that's hence why you have to plan it. The full moon also can be a bit of a drag if you don't want, because of the light. And it can, though there are other things you could do with the full moon, but we also had at that night, no moon. I guess it was a new moon, which was fantastic. And probably the last thing to check is the weather forecast. 2 nights. First night, gorgeous. Mark Buckner said it was one of the best nights he had seen. Second night, rain. We went south then to Hatteras and were able to get some pictures down there, but there was nothing to be seen in Nags Head area where we were the first night. So that's the planning part. Any questions so far? It's not. Okay, that's the great chart, and that's the website you can get it from. Equipment. You need a camera that is capable of taking time exposures. As you know, you need to capture all the light you can. All my cameras, I guess, can you do it with an iPhone? Someone more into that? I don't think so, or it would be difficult if somebody knows an iPhone better than I do. I don't think you can do it with that. You want a really wide angle lens. Now, my widest angle was 20. Some people there had 14, and even I think that was about the widest we had. The reason is you want to capture as much of that sky as you can, and you need a wide angle lens, and you need it fast. Fast meaning it has to have a f-stop of 2.8 or lower. Some lenses go down to 1.8, but you need that again because you're trying to capture light. Sturdy tripod. If you're doing night photography, you can't get away without it. You have to have a tripod because you're looking at an exposure 25, 30 seconds. Obviously, you can't hold it that long still, and everything would be blurry. And it's hard enough to get this stuff in focus without having a tripod that isn't there to help hold it. Also, you're in the dark, so you need a headlamp. And it's preferable that you have a red light. Red lights, and anybody that's a pilot, I know one other here, is something that you don't lose your night vision when you have a red light. And that helps. But one thing, if there are a group of you, you have to coordinate when you turn off your headlamps. Otherwise, they will show up in the picture. And I, of course, have some like that. The other thing that's really important is a remote camera release. You can get very fancy ones that use infrared. Personally, I like the ones that's attached to the camera, or you can use time delay, because any time you would touch that camera, if you could time delay for 5 seconds, at least then the tripod and the camera, all that vibration, which doesn't seem like much, but it really makes a difference when you're taking a long exposure. Bug spray, it was awful. We had This is where, you see these beautiful photos and, you admire them, but you have no idea what that photographer was going through. All of us had bug spray on, but it didn't do much good. We, of course, were standing on sand. It was the middle of summer, and it was bad news. So yeah, bug spray. Okay, now I'm going to go on to, come on, guy. Oops. There we go. Settings. All right, this might be where I have a few questions. White balance. I think you all know about white balance, and it's just easy to leave it on auto for the most case, particularly if you're shooting in RAW, because you can adjust your white balance during the post-processing. But if you're taking night photography, you have to learn something about Kelvin temperatures, and it's there, little K, and it would take, you can find it on your camera, if not, go back to the manual. And you want to set your white balance to a Kelvin temperature, not sunny skies, shady, and all those other choices you have. So those are in the range. Actually, my Kelvin was set a little lower for the workshop I was in, and it seemed to work. None of these things are, in stone. You have to kind of try some stuff, but I think I was more around 3000, and it worked fine for me. ISO. This, of course, everybody says the lower the ISO, the less noise. But you're trying to capture some faint light, so your ISO has to go up. What you need to do is balance noise, which is all those little pixels that come into a picture, and versus getting the picture itself. So it would be, if you had to err, it'd be better to have the higher ISO and deal with noise later. There are some software that can help you with noise. Aperture, you need to use the maximum. As you know, 22 is this closed down one. f1.8 or 2.8 is usually your lowest. Some cameras start at 3.5 or 4 if it's a zoom. Obviously, it's better if you use the lowest you can. Whatever you do with what you have. Focus is tough because obviously can't focus on the Milky Way, and so you need something that is in the area. It turned out in one case there was a red light in the distance, and you would manually focus that and then go on and take your pictures. I found I needed to constantly check my focus, and many of my pictures, I found things had drifted, or I touched the camera or whatever. And the focus just didn't, was tough, but it's really important if you want a good picture. Now, the shutter speed is kind of interesting. It depends on the focal length of your lens. And what I have here is, I had a 20 millimeter, and they say divide that into 500, and that comes out to be 25 seconds. That is your starting point. I used more like 20 seconds. Can't tell you exactly why, but again, it worked. One of the hardest things to do is to use you think you know where your camera's controls are? Just wait till you try to use it in the dark. I mean, yes, you have your headlamp, but there are things you might want to be using. You want to make sure it's level. You want to make sure it's in focus. And you can't practice that enough. And of course, I thought I knew where all the controls were on my camera, but man, when it was dark, that wasn't the case. I found it very, it is kind of intimidating. I mean, you want things kind of set, but you do change settings when you change angles, or in this case, we went to different places, so you can't leave it quite where it was.
So Minnie?
Yeah.
So really what it boils down to is that when we're shooting here at night, we're doing everything manual from your focusing down to
Yes.
all your settings.
Yes. Yeah, you
So-
can't use auto. Auto, it won't focus. It doesn't even know to focus. Obviously on autofocus, which is wonderful because I remember the days I was trying to match up little lines and so forth in my older cameras. Yeah, everything's manual. This is a whole new world for a lot of people. But it works, it's worth it.
Yeah, because what I found is that I tried to do the conjunction back, I guess, in December, January, whenever it was.
Yeah,
And what I had to realize is that once I focused on something and I manually focused on something that was maybe 40, 50 feet away, then what you can do is take a piece of tape and tape your focus ring, just so when you do move it later, it doesn't get bumped off.
yeah, actually, that's what several of us did. We actually did put a piece of tape on our focus ring, but then we changed things and you have to undo the tape. Yeah. But yes, that's an excellent thought. And you did it without thinking. So made a lot of sense. Okay.
Like you said, a lot of things are happening at night that don't go on during the day. So you really have to minimize any errors.
I don't want to discourage
I'm
people. Yeah.
I'm wondering why you have to pick anything to focus on, the distant light or whatever. Why not just set it on infinity and be done with it?
Doesn't work.
It doesn't work. It makes sense logically, but it doesn't work. You have to fine tune it.
Michael, I can tell you when I shot the meteor, when you put it on infinity, it's blurred. You got to bring it back. You got to pull it back a little bit. It absolutely doesn't work. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't question the advice, but I just wonder
why
why would that be? I mean, the stars are not a straight line away. They are at infinity, or more or less. But yeah, that's something I never would have thought of.
Well,
yes, I think it's
go
the
out and
issue with the
try it.
lenses.
Yeah, I can't get into the physics because I don't understand it, but it certainly doesn't work to be on infinity. You do have to dial it back. And thank you, whoever else spoke up there. Okay, you've taken some pictures, but that's part of it. Do most people use Lightroom or Elements? And so if you don't understand some of this, and some of these things might be in Lightroom and not Elements. I mean, I use Photoshop too, but I start off everything in Lightroom. The first is that you need a lens correction for wide angle. Most softwares have it built in that you can correct for that, because you'll see that pictures kind of bow funny a little bit, on the edges, and you want it to be straight, and you want your horizon straight. Without a straight horizon, obviously it takes away from the picture. The other things that came in really handy, the newest version of Lightroom, or maybe it isn't even the newest, has something called dehaze. And it does a wonderful job of getting rid of the haze that may not be obvious to you, but it is obvious when you make the correction how much better it is. It makes the blacks blacker and makes everything pop. Clarity also is helpful, and that's probably available for everyone. It makes the stars pop as well. And sometimes you have to crop. Obviously, you might have more in it than you want. And you need to look for unwanted objects to clone out. And I will be showing you some pictures now of kind of what I did as I went through the 2 nights. Just not a whole lot of pictures, but a few. And you'll see that you definitely need to do some editing. Let me start here. This is called body light. Everybody calls it Bodhi, and that's what I was calling it, but it is called body. It's near Nag's Head. I'm sure a bunch of you have seen it. Is that right? I hope, maybe a few. This is on the first night. This is July 10th, 2018. And this is sunset, just around 8:30. And, you know, it's kind of nice to catch the nice warm light on the lighthouse. That was kind of the beginning. It's getting darker now. It's close to 9 o'clock, and the object here was to try to catch it when the light came around. You see that little house there, which you'll see in the next picture. So it's still not dark. I was surprised how long you had to wait for it to get dark. I mean, it was dark, but when you're taking a 20 to 25 second time exposure, it isn't dark. So that makes sense. And this is about a little after 10 o'clock. They saw that little house. I didn't even know there were lights in that house. It didn't show up as you saw in the previous photos, but with a time exposure, it did. So you can start to see the Milky Way here, and you can see it's kind of going across the sky a little more. And as the night goes on, movement will take place of the Earth, and you'll notice the Milky Way moves a little. Well, after doing body light, we drove over to Oregon Inlet. And Oregon Inlet's a little distance south. And the reason we were there was to see this. This is an 1895 life-saving station. And we walked from the car out in the sand, through the bugs, to see this. Now you can see this is certainly not an ideal photo. We have, this is the bridge we came across right here. This is Mars over here, by the way. And then we have this construction going on with this crane. So yeah, we got the Milky Way, but this wasn't really the picture we wanted, for sure. So we went to a different location, walked further away, put some distance between us, and was able to get this picture. I've still had to take the crane out over here and do a little bit of work on the edge so it wasn't so bright. This was an amazing photo, and you can see what the difference was from the one I showed you before. What you're also seeing here, this is what you call light painting. This is a flashlight. Just as the 25-second time exposure is going, the flashlight was put over the, flashed at the ground or the sand and made this wonderful circle. So you have this complete circle and the eye just follows it. And it's really was made the photo. This is the prize photo from the night you're seeing now. Well,
that's the one.
Then
That's the one where you're came in #1 for Chapel Hill annual photo contest, right?
It actually did, to my surprise and a lot of other people. Yeah, the 3 judges really liked it. And again, as you saw from the picture before, you couldn't see the light inside here, but with the long exposure and where we were, it worked. Yes, it was. It won. Mind you, you get told that. You don't get a ribbon or anything, but it's just nice when people appreciate your photography, and that's all I'm looking for. And so then we went back to body light, and a little later, and you can see now that it used to be more like this, and now the Milky Way's more straight up. And this is a picture taken. There's some walkways that you can go out into the marsh, wooden walkways, and so this was taken there. Okay, night 1, we stayed out as long as we could, but then it started to get light again, so the night was done. I had no idea that you could see this amount of stars in the Outer Bay. I was totally amazed. I didn't think it was possible. Of course, the opposite of that is, you know, those stars are there all the time. It's just we don't see them. Next night, Hatteras. I mentioned it was raining at Oregon Inlet and Body Light. So we headed about an hour or so south to Hatteras. This picture was taken around 8:30. The sun had set, just set, a little bit of pink there, to give you an idea what the lighthouse, and of course everybody recognizes it by the diagonals here. And you can see the light. Well, that light is a pain if you're trying to take pictures. I realize it's a lighthouse. And you can see here's the Milky Way, but man, it's bright, and it's bright all the time. This is little Mars down here. And it turns so it's constantly on, the light, which is great if you're a boat and want to avoid the shoals. So this didn't work out too well until we learned a trick. And the trick was, as I was taking the time exposure, I put my hand in front of my lens like this. And that's what you're seeing. I'm blocking the light during the time exposure. And that is certainly much more pleasing to look at. So that this was taken about midnight that night. And then we went back up north, and it was still cloudy. It had stopped raining, but still cloudy. No more Milky Way. And that was the end of my adventure, which it was an adventure. So now I need to stop sharing, I think, unless there's something you want to see in one of these slides. Again, I don't think so.
I just questioned how your hand did that.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, this was all new. Yes, just passing my hand at a nice even speed between, you know, in front of my lens, made it do the spot, made it do this, and made this such, you know, a much more pleasing photo.
Yeah, because
No filter, no nothing, just your hand.
Just my hand.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a little trick Mark taught us. See, you got it for free. I had to take the workshop. So
yeah, and by doing that, it just cuts down, I guess it's what they used to call in the old days, dodging.
yeah,
Which is to cut out the overexposed light coming in. But all of those, like a starburst that you're seeing there, that's natural. You know, that wasn't due to the movement of the hand. The hand was just to tamp down on the over brightness of that.
yeah, yeah. It came out a starburst. I hear what you're saying, but you need the, if you didn't do the hand, you get, you know, this.
And Minnie, what I'm a big advocate of bracketing things and using HDR to combine those bracketed photos. You know, you take a picture of the moon and try to bracket it, and it's moved so much that, you know, you can't get rid of the ghosts.
Right.
Is there a way to adapt bracketing and HDR with what you've done in some of these photos? Or, I mean, these are all single photos, and they're
all single
amazing,
photos,
especially the precision.
Yeah, that are 25 seconds. No, not that I know of, because you're right. You can't do bracketing because there is a movement. Obviously, you have to focus. I mean, some people want star trails, and they will combine photos to get star trails, but I'm not into star trails. Also, staying out all night looking at the North Star. But these photos are singles. This is a time where bracketing, I mean, you can do different single photos, but the stars are going to move. I don't see how you could line them up in HDR at all.
Yeah, but playing devil's advocate, that over 25 seconds, it didn't move enough to blur those stars. And I don't think you're going to take a movie and try to combine all those frames. But if you can do it if you can get a good sharp picture in 25 seconds, why can't, it's just something to play with. I'd be interested in experimenting with it. And
Yeah.
I have to say that I've never done anything like this, but it makes me want to try.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm trying not to make it so difficult sounding that it's impossible. But it is something that does take planning, and you need to do it. I mean, the moon is a totally different thing because it's so bright. I mean, you're using quite fast times, but when you're doing time exposures, I'm not aware of doing that. Yes, report back, give it a try. I just think that the single photo is the way to go with this kind of photography.
Yeah. Well, there's kind of an inside joke in this group, and he came and left, but I sent him a note, sent Mark H a note about one thing that you said that is the inside joke, and that was getting the horizon straight. Oh. So
well, yes. But sometimes the horizon isn't straight. I mean, I have done it times when you want to, you can always break a rule, but most photos, if it bothers, and judges in competition are like really on this, but that's a competition, and I believe in doing what you want for yourself. I mean, there are times where a not straight horizon would give a photo an interesting effect, but it has to be really on purpose. But just being a little sloppy on a horizon doesn't usually help your photo. So I hit it, huh? Another option, another reason to have your horizon straight when you take night photos. But I hope all of you can get a chance to enjoy. I say the Outer Banks is one, but there are other places you can go where you can get the lovely night sky. And it is just amazing. I mean, I remember being out in the Tetons during the Perseids, which have just took place, the meteor shower. And it was just unbelievable what you could see. I mean, I could see the double star in Orion's belt with my eyes. And knowing that, yeah, there are places out there. So that's a good reason to get out in the boondocks and enjoy it. So.
Yeah, and there is apps that are available for free.
Yep.
That can actually show you the different levels of light pollution. Because like Nag's Head was probably one that was kind of like medium, but once you go a little south, like down to Bodie Light, it becomes as clear, as little pollution as you'll find anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you get down to Rodanthe, it's more of a town again, so you're going to have more light pollution. And you go a mile or two south and you're in the darkness again. So there's a lot of places south of Nag's Head that are perfect places for doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah. I see someone holding up a photo. No, are you holding up a photo? No, you're not. Okay.
Oh.
So I hope, I mean,
I have a question, Minnie. I have a question about, you mentioned about software to do noise reduction. Do you use something in addition to Lightroom and Photoshop? I mean, is there some kind of...
Well, I do, but not until recently. Topaz makes something called denoise.
Yes.
You might have heard of it. And
yes.
And AI Sharpen, and then and that seems to do a very good job. And it also sharpens at the same time. Of course, the problem about anytime you're using a denoise software, you might be taking some of the noise out, but you're also undoing some of the sharpening. It makes it softer. So everything's a trade-off, you know, how much you want to use, what makes sense, you know, in your photo, you know, what it can tolerate. So it's all a judgment call.
Yeah. No.
And Bill uses Topaz Sharpen, and I have it, but I don't use it until Bill has started pushing it, and then I think it's a good idea. But denoise I've used quite a bit, and and if you get rid of a lot of noise, it turns the background into mush. It just makes it so soft. You lose all the detail. But for some kinds of shot, that doesn't matter. But for this, it would, I think.
Yeah.
I find I'm taking so many photos in the evening of birds and things like that. And the ISO is just at the, you know, I'm lucky to be able to get anything. And I'm wondering if, you know, that might be worth trying Topaz to see if that could help, you know, save a shot or something that just.
Betty, if you have a particular shot you'd like to have done, just let me know and email it to me, because I have the Sharpen AI, I have the denoise, and I have the Giga. So if it helps you, you know, see how much of an improvement it can be, and if it's something you may want to purchase later, at least you can see the results and feel comfortable.
Terrific. I'll take you up on that, because I really would like to see if there's anything.
You can also get free trials of these for something like 30 days. You can try it yourself.
That's right. Yep. But then you have to learn it. Whereas this way, Bill learns.
Bill does it. Yeah, I know.
Wait a minute. I got to tell you, it's so simple.
It is simple.
Bill learned it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you just say, do it. And you say, I want you to pick the best way. And it does.
Okay, great.
It is simple. So you might want to take a look at it. Yeah, Topaz.
And I don't want to discourage people from trying it. And when I say that it makes the background gauzy, I haven't invested in denoise AI. I have the old one, and the AI may be better. Undoubtedly is.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're putting things in, like to do that, what's the extension? What format of the photo are you using when you're using denoise AI or whatever? I mean, are you working in RAW, or are you working in everything in RAW? And then,
RAW or a TIFF.
A TIFF, RAW or TIFF. Okay.
If I've done some edits, it turns it into a TIFF, just because that's the way I.
But the program itself will work with JPEG, TIFF, I think it's DNGs, TIFF, yeah. So and generally what I've been listening to and reading is that you tend to use these at the end of your process, where you may have had your image in RAW, you've gone through either Lightroom or a RAW processor, you've done some adjustments, and you've created a TIFF file or a JPEG, and then you go and do the next step, which is the either denoise or sharpen. Is that your understanding, Minnie?
Yeah, and you have to kind of decide if you want denoise or sharpen. That's up to you. And you kind of look at, that's my other night photography there, by the way. That's the Aurora.
That's your minus 20 degrees.
Yes, minus 20 degrees in Churchill, Manitoba. Yeah, what photographers go through is nuts, isn't it? We have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
yeah. You got to try. Everything is kind of like, try it and see it. If you don't like it, you know, move on. But yeah, these Topaz, there's quite a few photographers that are now saying, you know, this is pretty good. The denoise and the sharpen.
Are you going on any workshops or trips during the pandemic? I mean, well, what's that doing to your world?
Well, Yeah, no,
Are you
I'm
right
not.
here? You're here in Farrington, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. I live in
Yeah.
Galloway Ridge. Yeah, I'm in Farrington, right. No, we have a trip planned next June, an adventure cruise, as they call it, because there's only 150 people on the St. Lawrence Seaway River Canadian Maritimes, and it's a whale watching, bird watching type of thing, and we're out in our zodiacs, and so I'm looking forward to that. No, in the meantime, I'm enjoying taking pictures nearby. You don't have to, to go to exotic places to try out things. One thing I do is I put together a calendar every year, which I need to get working on. I actually use Vistaprint. It seems to work well for me. And I use the calendar, and the calendar I sell. They're little calendars and then desktop calendars. And they're all pictures taken at Galloway or Farrington. Only I now call it the Carolina calendar just because I want to. Some people that I'm in the studio tour with Chatham Artists Guild, and people there may not be all that interested in Galloway. So I call it Carolina, but they're all pictures from. So I keep myself busy, and I am amazed at the amount of workshops. I mean, I have a whole inbox full of, here's the bird photography. I attended New England Camera Club's virtual. Tim Gray has been doing some virtual things. And so there's no shortage of things that you can do and learning you can do. I have a course on texture, which I have not gotten into yet. And this is for instance, I took some animals at it's called the Conservatoire. It's over in Mebane. And the backgrounds are lousy, but the animals are cool. So I want to use more texture, and I need to work on that. I need to work on doing a better job with selection. I mean, there's just no end to it. It consumes you, right? But I mean,
what you have to do is don't limit yourself to what you think you like. Some weeks ago, there was this woman who told me that she wanted to go someplace at 5 o'clock in the morning to take photographs of sunflowers. And my first thought was, first thing I said to myself, I'd rather pull out my fingernails. But then I decided to say, well, Minnie's a lot of fun, so let's go. And it was great. I mean, you see things so differently if you sometimes have to get pushed into them, but don't say no so quick. And that's something that I've learned now, is I'm just not saying no to anything. And even now, when I see things about, taking pictures like for the agricultural, contest or something like that, I'm going to start doing those things. I've always poo-pooed them. It's a mental block. Just, as Nike says, just do it. Yeah. And if you don't like it after you've tried it, then fine. But I'm my own worst enemy.
Yeah, Bill picked me up at dark 30, and off we went to Dorothea Dix Park and got to see sunrise, though. And you can see Raleigh from the distance. And the big orange sun came up, very big and orange. Neither of us could capture it the way it looked, though. That happens. But it was a fun experience. Yeah. As you can see from our sunflower pictures we just flipped through.
That's great.
But thank you for listening.
I have a little.
I started to say, thank you very much for what you've done, and it's been instructive and motivating both. So
wow.
I have a little information that people might be interested in. You were talking about dark skies, and Alice is a member of the Chapel Hill. It's called CHAOS, Chapel Hill Astronomical and Observational Society. And they're all amateur astronomers, and amateur astronomers gather for star parties. And the Chaos group hosts a star party for people mostly in the East Coast. And it will be from October 4th to the 10th. And there will be many, many, many astrophotographers there. And it's at Stanton River State Park, just over the border near South Boston, Virginia.
Yep.
And that is an International Dark Sky Association Dark Sky. And it's about, from us, it's about an hour and a half away. And it lasts for a week. And there are many, many astrophotographers there. And as of now, it's still scheduled to happen. So there's some, if anybody's interested in astrophotography, they could rub shoulders with lots of others from Pennsylvania through Florida, people from that area in general. So there you have it. And I have a question also for Minnie. You talked about the trade-off between denoise and sharpening. So I was working on a photograph last night and I was trying to add noise to it. And I had previous to adding noise, I had sharpened it a lot. And every time that I was saving the photograph, but the product wound up being, I couldn't get the noise to appear in the final product. It was showing up in the software. This is Affinity. It was showing up in the software, but then when I exported it, the noise seemed to disappear. Is that because I had previously sharpened it? Did I make myself clear?
No, I hear what you're saying, but I guess I'd have to almost see what you're doing. What they recommend, even with Topaz, is that you use either one or the tutter. You don't use both.
So it might be that if I sharpened it.
Yeah, and so you either noise or denoise or sharpen, and of course you can add noise, and that's a whole different process. But you're kind of going at it, and you're pulling one.
I hadn't thought about it
away. If you really want noise, and why when you exported it, it didn't show up. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there.
Okay.
And what software were you using?
Can you use an overlay? I mean, if you want to add noise.
I don't know how to do it. I thought about that. I thought about using actual stars, but I don't know how to do it. So I'm ignorant and thrashing about.
Well, the other thing with Affinity, and I have it, but I'm not using it. But there's an On1 software company too, and some of the stuff they have allow you to emulate film types. And I'm wondering if you pick something with like an ASA 400 or whatever, whether converting it using that emulation program would do it as well.
Interesting. Yeah.
Hey, there are ways to add noise. It's not something I've pursued. I'm going the opposite. So
sure. Yeah.
But hey, sometimes that's what you want. So
okay.
Hey, Tom, what was the name of that state park?
Sorry.
Tom, what was the name of that state park?
Stanton River State Park, and that's a Virginia state park. And
yeah, okay, great, I got it.
And the name of the organization is Chaos. I'm not sure but CHAOS, and it's Chapel Hill Astronomical and Observation Society, and that's been around for.
Oh, Tom, if you send me all that information, I can email it to Bill. Would that be?
Okay.
Would that help? You want me to do that, Bill?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Just let me know, and or text me. I'll get it to Bill.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun too, by the way. Those.
I bet.
Yeah, back in June, I was thinking about going up there, but my plans changed, so you never know.
October 4th through the 10th.
And why did they pick that date?
I don't know.
Well, I'm sure it's dark, and trying to work the dark of the moon with the relative temperature.
Yeah, so it's probably a new moon. And then the, yeah, all right, thanks.
The new moon is on Wednesday, so
In the middle.
dark. It's
According
dark.
according to my Milky Way chart, those times are what they call days where Milky Way is only visible for a short time. So it isn't really going to give you much Milky Way, I think.
Okay.
Anyway,
But there are lots of other stars.
Minnie, thank you very much for an informative presentation. That was
Thank you.
fantastic. Very much appreciated. Good job. Thank you.
Well, thank you for listening. So I hope it gave you some enthusiasm to try something different. So good.
Yeah.
Anything else, folks?
Well, the only next thing is our next challenge being minimalist.
Can I
That'll
send
be
you
in-
a black picture?
Well, if that's considered minimalist.
I'll send in a
Would be.
white, you send in the black.
There you go, Mike. We can
Red.
partner.
I get red.
Mine will be the white cat and the snowbank, yeah.
Why is it
And
maximum?
Bill, how are you differentiating between minimalism and negative space?
They're the same.
Okay.
It
So you can't
depends
have
on the-
minimalist photo
It
without
depends
negative
on the
space?
maker.
All right.
Have a
Excellent.
you all.
minimalist photo without negative space.
So we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
All right. See
All
ya.
right.
Take
All right.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minnie.
Welcome,
Thank you.
welcome. It was fun.